I am Johnny Massacre and welcome to my world. May your stay here be interesting. Tonight, a Ukrainian girl has been stabbed. The media blame MAGA, not the murderer. Who is with me? Give me a hell yeah! A Ukrainian refugee flees war, sits on a train in Charlotte and gets stabbed to death. On camera, the killer said, quote, "I got the white girl," end quote. But when the media finally covered it, they didn't talk about her, they didn't talk about the killer, they talked about Trump supporters. Trump responded to this news from the Oval Office. So the victim was Iryna Zarutsk, 23 years of age. The killer is Decarlos Brown Jr. He has a long rap sheet. I believe he had been arrested 14 times, and he's alleged to be possibly schizophrenic. The incident was caught on video, and there was no coverage of this at all on mainstream media until conservatives covered it on X. I did check myself. I checked CNN. I checked in on MSNBC, who seems to be competing with CNN for the most dishonest, ideologically possessed news outlet in the galaxy. But I couldn't find anything on this whatsoever. When the mainstream media did cover it, the Axios headline was "MAGA influencers spread video." And CNN's Brian Stelter, that baldy bastard, he's still going, bruv. He scolded the racist comments under Elon Musk's comment regarding the incident on X and seemed to make the real story about MAGA and not this poor young Ukrainian refugee who was stabbed to death in America. So the story isn't the murder, it isn't the killer, it's you for noticing, and that's not journalism. So a new video has been released of the actual stabbing. I don't know if they've edited out the point of impact or if it's just the poor camera footage, but this is what it looks like. So disclaimer, this is actually quite unsettling. So you might want to look away now or turn off if you are of a sensitive disposition. Oh man, just terrible. Terrible footage. God. So that footage came out today. That is doing the rounds on X. Is it a racial attack? That is the question. Well, when the killer says race, that's usually enough for the media to declare it racial. Even if the killer doesn't say race, it's still enough for the media to declare it as racial. The media declared that the Derek Chauvin alleged killing of George Floyd was racial, but in the court case, there was no evidence at all to suggest it was racial. However, this video footage actually has captured the killer saying, "I got that white girl." Here is that footage. Sitting there minding her own business. Fuck, what a yeah. I got that white girl. I got that white girl. So he said that twice. I got that white girl. Does it make it a racial attack? You could certainly argue that in court. So George Floyd had global marches, even in England where I'm from, people were marching about that. In Congress, congressmen, congresswomen taking the knee, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer taking the knee, our current Prime Minister of England, Keir Starmer, taking the knee, towns burnt down, shops were looted, people were assaulted, golden coffin, all this kind of stuff. Maxine Waters outside the courtroom screaming for Derek Chauvin's arrest. With this, are the media calling it a racial attack when the guy said, "I got that white girl"? Are the media drawing attention to the fact that black on white crime massively supersedes white on black crime? And this might be a symptom of that? No, actually, the mainstream media barely talks about it at all. So I'm here to tell you that the mainstream media is covering up the real story here, which is America is relatively unsafe. You can actually be murdered in public. Statistically, you're quite likely to have that happen to you compared to places where, like, for example, Japan, where I live. Nobody helped this girl, which is quite sad. Obviously, the people that were very sad. Obviously, the people around her are also afraid. But after the killer walked off, nobody helped her. She was just left completely alone, which is super, super depressing. People are really pissed off about this online. Mostly peaceful memes on X said, "This is the shit that radicalizes you." This kind of picture. Just like she's in abject terror there. Very, very sad stuff. So Trump released a video talking about the murder. So this is blowing up. He's drawing attention to it, and rightly so. Let's hear what Donald Trump had to say about this.
For far too long, Americans have been forced to put up with Democrat-run cities that set loose savage, bloodthirsty criminals to prey on innocent people. Really very, very innocent people. In every place, they control radical left judges, politicians, and activists, and they've adopted a policy of catch and release for thugs and killers. In Charlotte, North Carolina, we saw the results of these policies when a 23-year-old woman who came here from Ukraine met her bloody end on a public train. And here's a picture of it. This is the picture of it. And this is a picture of the woman. A beautiful young girl that never had problems in life, with a magnificent future in this country. And now she's dead. She was slaughtered by a deranged monster who was roaming free after 14 prior arrests. We cannot allow a depraved criminal element of violent repeat offenders to continue spreading destruction and death throughout our country. We have to respond with force and strength. We have to be vicious just like they are. It's the only thing they understand. 24 of the top 25 most dangerous cities in America are run by Democrat mayors. 50 people were murdered in Chicago in recent weeks, with hundreds being shot. And it's time to stop this madness. The people of our country need to insist on protection, safety, law, and order. We have proven that it can be done, because we did it right here in D.C., in District of Columbia. The capital of America was a bloodthirsty, horrible, dangerous place, one of the worst. And now it's a crime-free city, and we're going to keep it that way. It can be done. It can happen fast. All we want is, please, Mr. President, we need help. Chicago needs help. Other cities need help. We'll do what has to be done, because we're going to make America safe again, and that includes our big cities. We're going to make those cities safe. Thank you.
So if it wasn't for X, you probably wouldn't even know about this story. So props for Elon Musk for spending $44 billion to buy X and bring you that story. We're going to get to Elon Musk's comments on this very soon. He didn't hold back whatsoever. I can't understand why the killer saying, "I got that white girl," isn't central to this story. You wouldn't even know it happened if you only paid attention to the mainstream media. Speaking of which, I took a screenshot of CNN the day after this had happened, and this is what their front page looked like. Nothing at all. I also went over to MSNBC. Nothing at all. Literally nothing. And then if you look at all of their stories, must reads, most watched, absolutely nothing. I thought the left-wing mainstream media loved Ukraine. This was a Ukrainian girl. But suddenly they don't care about Ukraine when it doesn't suit their narrative. So when X pressured the mainstream media into covering this story, they basically framed it like this. Here's the Axios headline: "Stabbing fuels MAGA's crime message." Surely the story here is not about the reaction to the crime. Surely the story here is about this, the irony of this Ukrainian refugee fleeing war, but ironically she's less safe in a country that is well known as supposedly the land of the free. That is the real story. But the mainstream media have pounced on the reaction of people to this crime. So the judge who let this guy out, who's been arrested 14 times, he's released 14 times. The judge who let him out looks like a DEI hired judge. I was looking on X about the people who basically put her on, just like typical DEI kind of hires. And she didn't pass her bar exam. And she basically just did the kind of basic schooling that most educated people do. And she has the power to endanger other people's lives. It's really, really crazy stuff. The judge is known as Teresa Stokes, and she's also the director of operations at Second Chance Services, which is a mental health and addiction clinic in Charlotte. So she essentially gets remunerated for taking in criminals on the taxpayer dime and trying to rehabilitate them. So she lets someone go who's a dangerous criminal into a community where she could potentially profit off it. So there is some kind of conflict of interest here. It's a bad look. It's a bad look. A GoFundMe was set up for the killer. Now, it's hard to believe this was even real. Maybe someone was trolling. I don't know. But a GoFundMe was set up, and the GoFundMe has now been taken down, I'm happy to say. But that was a very ridiculous thing to see. Indeed, to say the least. So other reaction to this on X is as follows. Let's see what we've got for you. This is the judge who released the criminal who went on to kill the Ukrainian girl. That's her, who also owns a treatment center. And here's Caroline Leavitt, Trump's press secretary, exposing that very judge was a strong Kamala Harris supporter. She also had pronouns in her bio. So this is a part of a pattern of leftists who oversee rampant crime in the districts in which they serve and propagate it.
In shoplifting, Brown had previously served 5 years in prison for a robbery with a deadly weapon charge, and he had also forfeited bonds 3 different times, twice in 2014 and once in 2023. Despite all of this past documented criminal history, when Brown was arrested yet again in January of this past year, a Democrat judge, who I will add was a strong supporter of former Vice President Kamala Harris, released this insane criminal once again without requiring him to pay any bail.
This is insane. So if she has pronouns in her bio, she's obviously a Marxist. That is the calling card. That's the business card of a Marxist. That's how they let you know they're a cultural Marxist. They put a pronoun in the bio so you can instantly tell. Those people believe all minorities are victims of white supremacy. And so when criminals like this guy come in to her, she's more likely to release them because she sees them as a victim and absolves them of any responsibility at all. So leftist judges are a plague on America, in my personal opinion. The Overton window is shifting. It really is shifting. I mean, here's an image of Trump in the Oval Office with the killer and the victim holding it up and looking devastated. This has occurred amid Trump sending in the National Guard to DC and him about to send in the National Guard to Chicago and potentially other places like California. So it further justifies Trump in doing that. If the leftist judges won't clean up their own cities, then leave it to the Trumpster to do it for you. Here's Elon Musk reposting a post regarding interracial crime statistics. He says, "Did you know this? These are just the facts as reported by the government. One can argue about what the solution may be, but the facts are accurate." He's referencing this post by Amory King that says, "You want to know something that should make you very uncomfortable? White people are the victims of black violence at insanely disproportionate rates. It's not even close. Between 2017 to 2021, black on white violent incidents totaled 2.38 million. White on black totaled 0.37 million, ratio 6.4 to 1. Annual victimization rates per 1,000, whites by blacks 2.4, blacks by whites 1.8. Per capita offending rates per 1,000. Blacks against whites 11.6. Whites against blacks 0.38. Ratio 31-1. For homicides, FBI 2019. Black on white 566. White on black 246. Ratio 2.3-1. Too long didn't read. A white person is 31 times more likely to be victimized by a black person than the other way around. Black people only make up 13.6% of the American population. Okay. So, when George Floyd died, every single leftist came out and said it was a racial attack and there's a problem with racial violence. But Derek Chauvin never ever said anything about race at all. There's literally zero evidence of that. Now, this is exactly the same situation. All you're doing here, the only thing you're doing is swapping the race of the victim and the perpetrator. And it's far more incriminating. It's far more incriminating in the case of the perpetrator. Derek Chauvin was called to a disturbance because a career criminal and an abuser and a drug addict had used a counterfeit note. And he came to apprehend the guy, and the guy resisted arrest repeatedly, and the guy was wasted on drugs. In this case, it's completely unprovoked. So, and all the mainstream media ran with this. Even Biden, I remember it. Biden came out and he said something to do with the fact that it was a racial attack. Biden said that. You had the president of the United States saying that. But using that logic, surely this is a racial attack. Now, I'm all willing for a court case. Maybe this guy, let's steel man it. Maybe this guy is schizophrenic and he's just out of his freaking mind, and it could have been anyone, and he's just saying, oh, it's like, I got that white girl because she was white. But I mean, in a courtroom, the prosecutor is actually going to use that against him. He's going to say that this was racially motivated. It certainly could be interpreted that way. So the mainstream media's silence on this is completely insane, and they're just not covering it anywhere at all. And cities were burned down when the roles were reversed, partly because the mainstream media could not stop covering it. And it shows you the mainstream media is beholden to their ideology, which is minorities are oppressed, white people are oppressors, white people hold down minorities and destroy their lives. This picture completely destroys that narrative, and so you can't show that picture. Why the mainstream media do this is something to do with their funding. Obviously, you saw with USAID, a lot of that funding, everywhere it went, the people who received it had to sell their souls to the people who were lending them the money. That's how it works. Once you take money from a government entity that's progressive, you have to dance their tune and you have to say what they want you to say. For example, I like electronic music. There's a website you buy tickets for called Resident Advisor. It's just sells tickets to events with house, techno, drum and bass and stuff. It's just about music. During COVID, they had trouble because clubs were shut down. And so they took a loan from the government. And in exchange for that, they became a hard leftist progressive company. So now when I go to buy tickets for a rave, then they have a news section where they talk about Donald Trump, and they talk about boycotting Spotify because it has links to Israeli investors and stuff. So once you take money from a government entity who's progressive, you have to start espousing their ideology and their narrative. So the mainstream media is obviously getting funded by people who are progressive. And so they don't want to show you things like this, but I'm here to show you. So that's what happened. The new video came out. Purple and yellow in the comments let me know there's an even more violent video that Alex Jones had on his show an hour ago. So maybe you can find that on X if you want to see it, but I'm not going to put it there because it's going to be too grim. What do you think about that? Do you think it was a racial attack? Do you think it's an outlier, as many progressives are saying? This is not the norm. Usually everything's fine. This is just a one-off occurrence. You shouldn't worry that this is going to happen. Do you think that the real story is the reaction to the stabbing? The reaction to the stabbing, the real story is white people reacting to a black guy stabbing a white woman and saying there's a problem with black violence. Is that the real story? What is the real story here? My personal opinion is this could be an act of racial violence, And it's just a damning indictment of Western societies that have all the resources to make society safe, and yet you routinely see news like this where unprovoked attacks occur and innocent people are killed or hurt. I grew up in London, and you hear about crazy things like this happening as well. Donald Trump, though, recently putting the National Guard into cities can only help, in my opinion. We need more law enforcement. We need more visible presence on the streets and in subway stations in Charlotte, by the looks of things. The Overton window is shifting. Even Fox News are saying that this is about race. And this is an image that is going to haunt a lot of people, and it's going to spark a lot of discussion. So please let me know what you think about it in the comments. So let me hear what you lot are talking about. What is going on? What is going on, everybody?
Nielo says, the one that Alex Jones put up an hour ago shows it all. Made me nauseous. Brad W says, I think the fatality statistics for that city she moved to is worse than Ukraine. Nielo says, and the NCFBI just put him up on terrorism charges a couple of minutes ago. He's fucked. A brimful of Asher says, or you're on about the black guy who stabbed the white women in the park whilst walking her dog.
So yeah, that news is massively blowing up, and we didn't have that video until today. We had a video before where they freezed it when the guy was attacking her, but now you see more of the video and you see her reaction. It's not what I thought it would be. I thought it would be a lot more gory.
Asher says in the video with audio, you can hear him say I got the white girl, so definitely a racial thing.
I mean, he could just be identifying her, but I mean, did he do it because she was white? Would he have done it to a black person? It's difficult to know. But you could definitely argue that in a court of law, and some jurors are gonna vote in agreement with that. So you certainly very strong case indeed. Cannot deny that. So yeah, I hope you were well, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode of Johnny Mask as well, please consider donating via the links to the right of my head. You know, I massively appreciate that. Money's really tight at the moment, so it would really help. Thank you to all patrons. Steven Suarez.
Yellow says, progressives only care about tragedies that advance their agenda. This does not do that.
Thank you also to Lauren, Sir Jeffrey, Martin Rangecroft, Jimmy Shorts, and Tom Christopoulos and Deathclaw Jedi for your contributions. Without them, I couldn't function. Thank you very much, everyone. Yes. Progressive cities have a lot of crime. I think 9 of the 10 most crime-ridden cities in America are Democrat-run, so obviously it's a Democrat thing. Those cities require a shitload of funding, and they're massively in debt. And they claim to want to help minorities and crime-ridden places. So the irony is, even though they get more money than other cities to deal with this problem, they have more crime than ever. And the genius of Trump sending in the National Guard shows you that Democrats aren't really serious about solving crime. If they were, they'd use those funds wisely and take a tough stance on crime like Trump has. If you do that, then crime will decrease. It already has in DC, where Trump sent in the National Guard. Even CNN admitted that. I was reading that today. You can't deny that. It's almost as if Democrats create the crime with things like, I don't know, defund the police, and then ask for more money to deal with the problem that they created. And when they get more money, it just gets worse and worse, and they spend it on weird progressive policies and Marxist things, and I don't know, like building weird statues of ugly people in their cities and doing stupid things like that, instead of actually just putting a shitload of police on the streets. If there was a policeman on that train carriage, do you think that criminal would be less or more likely to carry out that attack? I don't need to answer that for you. So Trump is kind of doing a masterstroke with sending in the National Guard to all these places, because that is one of the key issues for voters, if not the main issue after the economy. It's crime. People don't want to be stabbed when they're out in public in an unprovoked attack. And at the least, they don't want to look over their shoulder the whole time. So with Trump sending in the National Guard, if Democrats push against that, that's going to make people vote against Democrats nearly every time because no one's going to vote for crime. It's kind of genius on Trump's part, or massive stupidity on Dem's part, or maybe a bit of both. Maybe just a bit of both, bruv. But yeah, that's what's going on today. Stay tuned, everyone. I might be back later with some gaming streaming. Take care, everyone. Cheers.